Hey, Token Breeze, how are you? You're on mute.
Yes, I was struggling to find the unmute button. Hey, glad to be here, and yeah, thanks for the invite.
No, of course. I'm so excited to have you here. You are a stablecoin guru. And before we get into Pharos specifically, for people who don't know you, can you tell them what your background is and how you originally got involved with Ethereum and DeFi?
Sure, maybe just the guru thing, because like literally my whole angle is about like showing people the trust required in system and how they can use trustless system. So yeah, I'm not a guru. I'm just a proper nerd about stablecoins, right? Uh, I got involved 7, 8 years ago now in crypto and DeFi. Initially, my focus was really on community angle, right? So I was in the early days of DeFi, and I was very concerned then that essentially the whole discussion was in English. And so I worked a lot during my first year on DeFi France, a community we created in France to organize meetup, to create a discussion space where we were pretty adamant about it happening entirely in French to make it accessible to French-speaking people that don't speak English. Um, yeah, it took a while to get people to comply, but eventually we managed. So yeah, and it's still running to that day. It's still a very healthy group. But yeah, from then on, I kind of explored and worked with different projects. I was working with a non-custodial smart wallet paired with a debit card back in the days before all of that was cool. Token card monolith for those who know. I worked with Pharos, DEX aggregator, and also with Liquidity Protocol. That's kind of the headlines over the years. Got involved in quite a few DAOs. Yeah, essentially did everything I could, always a bit with the same mindset of promoting maximally decentralized and true DeFi, as we can simplify it to, I think people understand what we mean here. And yeah, I guess another pet peeve of mine is um, I'm very protective of DeFi, So I'm still a bit triggered when I see projects calling themselves DeFi, and you check and you find a multisig that is omnipotent with no time lock, and I'm like, a part of me wish the community was much more intense in enforcing that, like, you don't have the right to call yourself DeFi. But yeah, that was me a few years ago. No, I chilled out, and instead of doing that, I just built Pharos to kind of provide that visibility on the topic I know a lot about, which are the stablecoins, and yeah, provide data to people to let them realize by themselves what's happening here. And essentially, hopefully, another like Terra type situation will not happen again. Maybe, I hope so, because now you will have on Pharos a big flashing F with receipt as to why Terra is completely unsafe, and probably you shouldn't ape your life saving in here. And maybe that would have helped people to reason about it. But who knows? I can only provide data and source it. Then people make their own decisions, of course.
Why did stablecoins become your main area of interest?
Yeah, it's a good question, actually. I kind of stumbled upon it. I had a bit of a dual hat for a while. I was also very interested into the DEX. And, as I was working with Parashop, it kind of opened the door for me there. But yeah, essentially, I'm interested into, the very core DeFi things. And it's essentially, yeah, stablecoin and DEXs. I think with that, you also have the money market side. But this side has never been so interesting to me. It's a bit more um, uh, let's say, RWA dependent and much more centralized overall, much more managed. I guess what I like about DEXs and stablecoin is that you can, if you're willing to do so, you can build fully trustless systems there. Where for a money market, it's a bit harder, I guess. Probably, I mean, you already have some that are pretty close, and even some small ones that are fully trustless. So there's that. And for the stablecoin, it's just, I see it as the most obvious selling point for DeFi to the outside. And it's kind of a bit mind blowing to me that we are not already much bigger, because there are some things that are pretty instant benefit that anyone can understand, right? So like, for instance, I don't know, but I'm European. I live in Europe, but I like to diversify my saving currency, right? The dollar is cool, and I guess that's already a nice thing of DeFi. It gives me access to the dollar, which, if you think 10, 15 years ago, a French guy saving in dollar wasn't such an easy thing to do. But also, even more important, for instance, it gives me access to something like the franc Suisse, which I have keen interest on for its various properties and its history. And so, with a project like Frankencoin, for instance, the ZCHF, I'm able to, one swap away, I can get my ZCHF and then put them in a saving product, get 4% on my CHF. And, I don't know how the path to do that looks like in traditional finance, but I'm quite confident it's more than 2 steps.
Of course. And for you, what does the trustless stablecoin mean to you?
I'm very simple when it comes to that. That means essentially, I'm going to be even extreme so everybody understands. That means I can drop a bomb in the office where the whole team works. Every single team member is dead and the project's still chugging along. That means if I am the American government or a large corporate and I want to take that stablecoin down, I cannot do that. That means there is no singular dependency to a technical element like a Chainlink Oracle or something like that. Essentially, a disaster-proof, nuclear-proof type of project. That's, to me, that is the most interesting component of what we do in DeFi, right? We have confidence that Uniswap, whatever happens to the team, whatever happens to, and I hope nothing happens to them, of course, but even if the American government go ballistic on Uniswap, well, it's immutable code on the Ethereum mainnet. So unless you can acquire, majority and rewrite the whole network, essentially, there's not much you can do. So I like those protocols that have a level of resilience equal to or as close to as possible as the network itself.
Very cool. I think that is a good lead up into Pharos. So give me a moment while I pull it up on everyone's screens. Okay, here we are looking at Pharos.watch, the Pharos dashboard. Now, for someone looking at this for the first time, when they open up Pharos, where should they look? How do you recommend people start to navigate this?
Well, I guess to everyone their own, but maybe the main idea and the thing I put a lot of focus on is the specific stablecoin page. So you can just pop in the page of a stablecoin you are, I guess to start with, you are knowledgeable about. You can just do a search and I don't know, or even scroll and you have the menu. But yeah, maybe if we start with a household name, a USDT or USDC, just to kind of show a bit the data that Pharos can bring forward. You get a little warning. I have an issue with the yield feature, but it's not affecting the rest. I've been a bit greedy, wanting to push some cool stuff before the live. But yeah, I guess the main thing people are looking for on Pharos and commenting on Twitter and so on is this safety rating that you see on the right. Because that is essentially a world first, right? Pharos is reviewing every single stablecoin there is in existence that we are able to find. So that means you have ratings on 300 something stablecoins. And those ratings are done with a fully open source framework that anyone can audit, monitor, or fork even if they want. And everything is sourced. And it's articulated over 3 simple dimensions that everybody can understand. So it's essentially, the backing. So like, every stablecoin is a receipt for something, right? But is that something is worth something? That's a backing dimension. And then, okay, so your collateral has some form of value. So then the question is the exit, right? Can I get in and get out of this stablecoin and actually very close to the value it's supposed to represent? And the last dimension is the control dimension. If you scroll a bit on the page, you can see those 3 for USDT. The breakdown, just a bit below, and yeah, you have the 3 bars right there. And so the control, those 3, the 3 bars on the left. Control is about, and it's a very frequent, it's actually the most popular attack vector this year for stablecoin. But it's essentially who has control over the stablecoin, who can mint it, how are the wallets that can mint it secured, or if it's purely smart contract driven, are they safe, and so on. So it's really the idea of, we've seen quite a few stablecoins this year that got affected by that. I guess the most spectacular would be Resolve, resolve USR, but there was USDA, UAR, and like 5 or 6 more just since the beginning of the year, where essentially you have instance of stablecoin being minted without collateral and then dumped onto the market. And so the LPs are the first to suffer in such scenario, as we've seen with Wizard. But then, depending on the stablecoin specific, especially if they have a redemption mechanism, the collateral could also be in danger. So it's a big point, and it's something I wanted to make very explicit on Pharos as well. But yeah, maybe next to it is also quite a popular feature. Is this reserve breakdown?
Before we move on,
Yeah.
when I'm looking at these 3 score elements, can you talk about how you actually calculate, like, how is this determined to be a 75 and how is this determined to be a 99, and what goes into those actual kind of selection criteria there?
Yeah, you have a full breakdown in every single dimension, but essentially for the backing, for instance, every single component of the reserve will be evaluated, and either it's a stable coin, because that happens quite a lot, or it is, like for instance, in Tether, you have some precious metals, or you have some bank deposits and so on, treasury bills. So they all map to categories that Pharos know of, So for instance, the T-bill, you have 50 variants of T-bills, but they're all essentially the same thing, right? So it's questions, essentially the standardized question about this are, what is the time to exit of that collateral? Because that's another very frequent issue we've seen with stablecoin, where at face value they are backed, but then, oh no, it's some kind of weird exotic product that requires 3 months to liquidate, and you're not certain you can actually get the value you're supposed to get. This kind of vibe. So yeah, those are the main things for backing. Like, is it safe? Is a trust compromise there? If it's a centralized asset, it looks also at the regulatory dimension and the time to exit.
So here for USDT, it looks like their biggest kind of weakness in their strength is the claimant segregation. What does that mean?
I think the main thing for USDT, the main problem is essentially, you've seen probably recently that they announced that they've been audited by KPMG, which so far wasn't an audit, and we haven't seen the document yet. So the main thing is about that. Is essentially the USDT reserve is a bit opaque. And the main other thing for USDT is that you have, you can see it on the right on the chart with the reserve, that you have a bit of an exotic composition, right? It's not just a pure TBL stablecoin. You have some Bitcoin, you have some loans, you have some precious metals, and all of this together, they still make for not the majority of the backing, but a share that is high enough to not ignore it, because it's about 40% of the total backing made of that. So those would be the main weakness. Maybe if we take a USDC to compare, you can see, you will be able to see a bit more like what a cleaner reserve composition for a centralized stablecoin could look like. Oh wow, it's a bit slow, or is it me? No, okay. So yeah, you see with USDC, you have a similar T-bill composition, almost equivalent, but the rest of the reserve is essentially some form of bank deposit or deposit in financial institutions. And if you open the backing subdimension like you did for USDT, you will see a bit of a more cleaner split. You don't have anything flashing. For USDT, what kind of redeems it is the most risky component are also the ones that are not very heavy in the reserve. So this is also weighted, So essentially, Pharos doesn't slash your backing score if you have 1% exotic collateral, for instance. The score of that collateral is weighted by his total composition of the reserve.
And so here, the claimant segregation is much higher. It's an 87, and that's because you have more confidence that the reserve listed here is actually the reserve backing it. Is that correct?
Yes, and actually, if you scroll back a bit up, I think it's a live reserve that we have for USDC. Yes.
Yes.
So you see, you have the little life flag. So that means one way or another, Pharos is able to reconcile that reserve live. So for on-chain stablecoin, that's usually pretty easy. Something like a BOLD or an LUSD, I just read the contracts and I can know how much ETH is in that thing, essentially. But of course, as soon as we step into the world of centralized stablecoin, it's another game, and you have very different level of transparency and auditability there.
Can you continue to walk through the safety score here? So now if we look at exit, can you talk about what these different scores are?
Of course. So for the exit, again, high level, it's like, can I get in and get out of this stablecoin at all time and at for $1 stablecoin at a cost very close to the dollar. So here you have two main things that will be looked at: the DEX liquidity, but also the redemption path if there is any. So depending on the stablecoin, you have either one or the two or the other. So in the case of USDC, you have both, right? You can redeem USDC for bank deposits, but also USDC has very strong liquidity all across the board on gazillions of chains. So that's why you get this exit score that is literally perfection, because the liquidity of USDC is pretty hard to beat, and you have a redemption that has a bit of restriction. Of course, you need to be a verified business or whatsoever. So there are some restrictions here, but because the liquidity on the DEXs is so good, essentially you will get you get some stats about the what kind of size can be executed, and in a little font right below. So you have about 25 million that can be executed at 0 BPS instantly, so that's pretty good. And you even have the detail of all the other evaluated route if you open under the first breakdown of the score. But essentially, Pharos looks at a lot of route and then score on the best one to be fair to the stablecoins. And it's just a kind of compromise I found, because you have very diverse situations. It was a lot of work to get a framework that works well on everyone.
Moving on, let's look at economic control.
Yeah, sure. So economic control is two things mainly, and they are a bit of the same thing, but it's just a question of perimeter, right? So the mint authority is who can mint this stablecoin. But now we live in a multi-chain world, so it gets really complex. So essentially, mint authority looks at the canonical chains. Usually there is one, but sometimes there are several. And then the bridge deployment will look at, any form of, you have a stablecoin locked and it's represented on another chain. But then, to make that happen, you have various mechanisms that can be in play here: CCAP, the omni-chain fungible token, and so on. You have a few standards. So depending on all of this is set up, you can get very different realities. And it's also, we were just saying that the mint authority has been big attack vector this year. So result was directly that failing. But the cross-chain stuff has also been making a lot of casualties, right? I don't know, it's not such a recent example, but for instance, the May stablecoin got an issue with its deployment on Phantom a few years back that is leading to stablecoin being completely under collateralized, went to pretty much zero on that chain. So yeah, altogether they give you a sense of can there be any abuse that will lead to unauthorized minting, so unbacked minting. And yeah, for USDC, they have a pretty good score on the mint authority. For the bridge deployment, you can actually, I think, have the breakdown if you click. Yeah, so you can, but I think because they use CCIP, it's standardized now. Now you have some that are a bit better than the other, because the reality is very different per chain, especially for all coins like this. They've been going through several versions, and depending on what happened, they don't have necessarily the same standard. But here the same thing is happening that you have on the collateral. It's ponderated by the actual supply on each chain. So yeah, that's also leading to a lot of fun to do supply reconciliation of stablecoin across 130 chain. But I'm finally figuring it out. It's a very heavy infrastructure we have behind Pharos, but I'm pretty happy to the place it is now. So yeah, that's kind of the main overview, all together. And we represent them with these little triangles. Maybe if you go on the actual safety score page now, because then we can see kind of all the safety score of different stablecoins next to one another. So it's in the risk subtype, the first one, yeah. So you will find those little like triangles. If you scroll a bit more again, yeah, that kind of give you instantly, like visually, an idea of what the stablecoin is strong at. So for instance, if you just look at, of course, something like USDC is pretty strong all around. But for instance, if you look at something like DAI, you can see that the triangle is more pointing toward exit, and this is definitely the strong dimension versus backing and control that are a bit weaker. So maybe I'm in love with my own product, but I find it very informative, to just scroll through the page and you get an immediate sense of the stablecoin and what are the main weaknesses and strengths.
Yes, it's really cool. Just to repeat, to get to this page, you go to risk and then safety score. Let's, before we move on, do a similar walkthrough to something like Liquidity's Bold, so we could understand how the risk score is calculated for a more decentralized trustless stablecoin. So
can you put it in a bit bigger so we get the sidebar as well? Because there's tons of cool stuff in the sidebar. It's a bit of a better design if you have the whisk. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, sorry, it's hard to manage how to at best looks on the live stream so people can fully see it.
So Bold is faring pretty well. It's actually capped at 84 because you can see it like the binding cap because it has less than 2 years of history. So I'm also factoring the Lindy effect. I think without that, it will be very close to USDC, just a bit below. But yeah, the main thing that are to look at with the Bold situation is you have a low risk collateral, right? That is observable on chain at all time. So very strong backing there. On the exit side, they actually have very good liquidity relative to their size. So that's also something maybe I didn't stress, but the DEX analysis is looking at relative to the market cap of the stablecoin, right? It makes sense, more than just the absolute value. And also what's helped a lot for the exit dimension and why it's scoring almost like USDC is because Bold actually have redemption. So you can redeem Bold for the collateral that you're in the reserve competition. And it's permissionless. You don't need KYC. You don't need anything. Anyone can do it on chain. You have some Bold. You want to redeem them for collateral. It's just a function to trigger. So that helps a lot with the score. And finally, on the control dimension, well, we are on an immutable system here, so there is no owner. What cost it a bit is the bridges deployment, as you can see, because they're using standard bridges, but there are compromises compared to what you can have, essentially, to put it another way, a Bold on, I don't know, Arbitrum, for instance, is a bit less of a guarantee than a Bold on mainnet, because at least you have the risk associated with the Arbitrum network and the bridge. And, the recent RSC event shows you that this Arbitrum-related risk that we were all quick to dismiss is actually very real and can materialize sometimes to save people and refund after a hack, but could also happen the other way around. We kind of go back to this question of if the US government wants to shut down Arbitrum is done within an hour.
Yeah, makes sense. Maybe can we do, so I think this, actually, before we move on here, how do you think about the Oracle design when looking at the more decentralized stablecoins?
Yeah, so if you scroll down a bit, you actually have a full module on the Oracle. You will find it a bit below, a bit more. The Mint Authority Reserve Quality, Collateral, Pricing and Liquidation. Yeah, that's this one. So it's looking at the Oracle per branch or per collateral, essentially. This is a module that is specific to CDP stablecoin. That's kind of one of the cool things I added to Pharos in the last months with the V9, that essentially Pharos is classifying stablecoin into mechanisms, right? And then applying a different subset of the framework depending on the mechanism. So maybe to just, without going too deep, but to give you the most obvious, for instance, when a stablecoin is classified as a centralized tokenized bank deposit type of stablecoin, then the regulatory and transparency question, are they audited by someone, or are they publishing live reserve, become a big topic. But for something like Ball, this question is not so important, for instance. But since it's a CDP type stablecoin, what becomes important is how is the board system overall pricing its collateral? Because if there is a problem here, it's a vector of abuse, and it can lead to the system being under collateralized. So yeah, here it's a bit of a tough analysis. There is a lot of factors to account for, but it's essentially looking at which provider are used, and there is a form of scoring of the provider here, and then looking at the essentially the subtleties of the implementation, right? Are they taking the value given by the provider at face value, or is there some form of sanity check? Do they have some form of fallback or redundancy? What happens if the provider doesn't publish any data at all? Does the system just freeze? Or, it's all this kind of question. But yeah, it's a tough game, and I was hoping, it's this kind of thing. I wish there was someone who built Pharos for Oracle implementation, and I would just read that data. But it's the kind of thing I had to build myself, essentially. And you get into a very technical dimension here, methods of latency and fault tolerance and things like that. So I'm confident the implementation is pretty decent, but there's definitely room for improvement.
Yeah, and I think that is a message to the rest of the community. I mean, I do think that you have a good implementation here, but if you're someone watching this that wants to contribute to DeFi safety, adding to Oracle transparencies and risks would be really valuable to the community.
And yeah, maybe when we are on the build a shout out, Pharos is also fully MIT open source. So if you want to contribute to Pharos, of course you can, but also, and it just happened recently, if you want to kind of fork Pharos to do it for something else, you can also totally take the code as such and tell your cloud to repurpose it. So we just had someone on Twitter that wanted to have visibility on the tokenized stocks that are becoming more and more important, and essentially is forking Pharos for tokenized stocks. I was pretty pumped about that, because this is also why I built it this way and I made it open source, because I'm kind of hoping, it's not just about Pharos, but that we will get the Pharos for everything we need a Pharos for, essentially.
Really cool. Yeah, we obviously love to see things open source, especially MIT licensed. So yeah, if anyone wants to play around with the data, feel free, go fork it. It's open source. I think actually there's so much going on in this page, it wouldn't do it justice to just skip over. Let's scroll down and just kind of slowly walk me through everything here.
Sure.
So first, what's on this little overview page here?
Yeah. So first you have a kind of, I call it the stablecoin passport, because I kind of design it like that. So you get a bit of the key metrics, the price, market cap, the yield versus reference rate. So in this case, we are on a USD stablecoin, so the Ethereum. And then you will get a bit of an overview of, various critical dimensions for the stablecoin, what type of minting process there is, can you redeem it or not, is it a freezable stablecoin or not? Maybe that's an important thing, since we both care about trustlessness. Pharos also, it's the first time it was consolidated, I think. Every single stablecoin is assessed on freezability. And yeah, you can click it, I think, to see the other stablecoin that are in the know. Oh no, it brings you to the module that explain this. We can go in the freeze watch page after once we're done with this one to go through it.
Okay, so that's really cool. So everyone knows, if you're curious to learn more about something on the stablecoin passport part, you could be I wonder what this immutable CDP means, and click it, and it'll bring you down to the module.
Yes, exactly. It's kind of a bit of a routing module and an overview at the same time. So yeah, you get an idea of the record are the depeg incident, because initially Pharos started very focused on peg and depeg tracking, chain deployment, and then things about jurisdiction, Mika, Genius, things like that. So for something like Bold, it's not really important. Maybe I should make it that it for the few cases, the 10 decentralized stablecoin we have, we don't even display that because it's close to useless. But yeah, that's kind of the stablecoin passport. You also have an idea of the backing. And yeah, maybe another thing is this classification. So Pharos classifies stablecoin in 3 categories that are all tied to actionable facts. So essentially, you have the decentralized stablecoin, like a Bold. You have what are called on Pharos the CeFi dependent stablecoin. That would be something like a Maker, for instance, where they might have a governance and a decentralized infrastructure. At the end of the day, they have majority real-world asset as their collateral, or tokenized real-world assets, So it is CeFi dependent, and then the straight CeFi stablecoin like a USDC or a USDT we were watching before. So yeah, that's kind of like the passport, and then this is a bit of a summary that gives you the overview of the things to look for, what is unique, interesting about this stablecoin, what is special about it. The idea is that you kind of get a sense of the direction on the stablecoin just reading a few lines. So here it's really stressing the uniqueness of Ball, in terms of the immutability of the protocol and the collateral being high quality, the fact that it has redemption, pretty much everything I was telling you while commenting the safety score, because it's pretty much similar. Yeah, on the sidebar you also have some interesting details. Collateralization ratio that is updated daily, an overview of the access posture. So, can anyone freeze it? Is the exit permissionless or gated behind KYC? If there's governance, some stablecoins can have restricted transfer sometimes too. So, I discovered layers of Pharos I had no ideas. And yeah, so in the sidebar you also have, this is a bit of a board specific, but this liquidation backstop, which is essentially how much you have in liquidation modules in the case of called the stability pool. So how much of the supply could be liquidated like instantly with what's already available on chain. That's also what makes Bold a pretty sturdy choice, right? Because that you read this right? You could liquidate 2/3 of the stable coin in one block if needs to be, because ETH is dumping to $300 or whatsoever. So not so cool for the borrowers, I guess, because usually other protocols are much slower on this. But here we're in the perspective of a stablecoin holder, right? And as a stablecoin holder, this is very good news to you, because that means even if ETH is having the worst day ever of its existence, you're confident that the liquidation will happen, at least until this is liquidated. And then there's also a mechanism. We're going to go a bit too deep involved, but yeah. So here what you're seeing is this peg stability mechanism. So what I was telling you about. So here it's a CDP mechanism, just a quick diagram to show you how it works, and the main step as to how the stablecoin is produced. And yeah, this is also the basis for then determining which kind of modules of Pharos are activating on the stablecoin. So here, okay, we have a CDP. We are going to be looking at the record, the control posture, various kind of things like that. And okay, maybe the legal is not such a big deal, so we will not do a whole module on the legal for this one, and transparency and things like that, because all of that is on chain.
Very cool. We already walked through this section. Yep. And here you can see also on the right, on the little sidebar, there's more you can learn about it. So here you can see freeze and seizure, as we know, not freezable. The mechanism CDP. Okay, can we talk about this DPEG early warning?
Yes. So this one is one of the coolest modules of Pharos. I really like it a lot. It's essentially looking at various signals that are observable on chain to give you a kind of seeing into the early future type of vibe, right? So the idea is to detect huge surge of activity. Could be huge minting or burning. It could be a lot of transit across chain. Overall, a lot of movement, liquidity being pulled out, or the balance of liquidity pools really skewing one way or another. All those kind of signals by themselves, they don't tell you so much, but if you put them together, if I tell you of a stablecoin that the minting volume is surging, but at the same time the pool is skewing a lot in favor of, there is very few pairing asset in the pool, it starts to sound like the stablecoin is getting infinitely minted, right? So assembling them together, you can get a signal. So it's rating from 0 to 100. So as we can see right now, Bolt is calm. There is nothing much happening. Of course, it's, again, it's trying to see the future. So if you see this getting excited and, 50, 60 or something, it doesn't necessarily mean the stablecoin is getting attacked. It could just be that, I don't know, it suddenly got trendy on Twitter and everybody started minting and buying it at once, and then those signals are picking up. But it can be still a pretty useful tool, and it has shown some interesting results, especially because we do have a Telegram bot for Pharos. And with the bot, you can customize the alerts that you're getting. So you can essentially tell the bot, You will find it in the
Where do people go
little
to get the bot?
in the little lighthouse on the top right. Here, little bot, yes.
And just so people know, I'm subscribed to the Telegram bot, and it is very high quality. It's not going to flood you with useless updates. It'll just give you very like specific updates about potential early depegs. It's really useful. I would recommend subscribing if you're interested in this topic. So that's right here.
You can customize per stablecoin and per type of alert. So that's typically a way people are using it is to get the depeg early warning notifications.
Okay, let's move on here. Can you walk us through this page?
Sure. So this is just mint and burn of the stablecoin, right? So assessing over a different time frame, how much has been minted today, how much has been burned today, and kind of giving you a sense of how that relates compared to standard volume of the stablecoin. So here you can see that it's been a bit of a net burn day for Bold, but not by a huge margin, and you have a bit of a sense of the trend over the last week, last month, and last 3 months. Yep. So it's a pretty classic day. Yeah, this one is pretty cool as well. So that's essentially the dependency map of the stablecoin. So here you see both the upstream and downstream dependent, right? In the case of Bold, there is no upstream. Bold is not dependent on anything, but Bold has downstream dependencies. So other stablecoins that are using Bold as a collateral or in various mechanisms, or just wrap versions of the stablecoin as well. So in here you have one that is using Bold as collateral, that is the USDIF, and then 2 that are just essentially wrappers of the Bold stability pool, and so wrappers of Bold essentially.
Very cool.
Yeah, this one is an important one if you've been traumatized by the infinity mints we were talking about. So it's essentially assessing overall the minting setup of the stablecoin, right? And there are various ways to score good on this. So, for instance, yes, okay, USDT can be mint by multisig, but that doesn't necessarily mean USDT is getting 0 here. Then we jump into different questions. Is it properly secured and so on? Is it delay and so on? So in the case of Bold, we already mentioned, but just to be quick, Bold is the only way to mint Bold is to supply collateral to the contract and borrow against your collateral. So that kind of solves the question pretty easily.
So, but on that topic, with that being said, why would it not be 100? Why is it 95?
That's a good question. Yeah, that was an arbitrage I had to make. There was still one thing that could be better. I have a blank. I have to come back to you after that.
I mean, it could. I'm just guessing. Maybe it could also be just like its maturity, that it's still relatively new. The contract could be hacked. I don't know. I'm just guessing.
Yes, maybe there is some assessment of the contract. I'm not sure. I need to double check because you have the whole detail on it, but this is pretty wordy. There was no incident on Bold.
I clicked the methodology, and this is just for the mint authority score. You can see the entire methodology that they use to calculate the scores here.
What else? So yeah, this is just looking at the reserve, and especially in that perspective of, so this is already kind of factored in the safety score we show above. But you were asking me earlier, how does this backing score is assessed? Well, typically that would be the dimension that are looked at, right? So you look at the assets in reserve, and you look at the nature, the type. So here we are pure crypto, but also the time it takes to liquidate them. Here essentially it's pretty much immediate. All of the assets have liquidity on chain, but there are capacity question. So ETH, you can obviously liquidate ETH very abundantly. Wrap stake ETH and air ETH might be a bit slower, harder to liquidate, especially in a bit of a more catastrophic situation. So that's why you have some that are not considered immediate. So yeah, we went through this one already. That's essentially the Oracle one. Then yeah, you have a bit of market data, so the market cap and the peg deviation. This one is pretty useful, I think, to kind of get a sense of what's happening with stablecoin. So one of the known weakness of bond is that it can have a tendency to overpeg. There is good mechanism to control the underpeg, but overpegging is a bit slower to resolve because it's essentially based on borrowers borrowing more and dumping into the market to benefit from this 1, 2, 3 extra percent. So yeah, that's. But overall, it's keeping a very tight peg. As you can see, we're in a band between 0.995 and 1.005. So yeah, it's doing a good job here.
And you can really customize this graph however you want. You can do different time frames. You could even drag to different, or drag a window to focus it. Although I don't know if that's working right now. But yeah, it's super customizable, as you can see. Oh, there we go.
Oh, wow. I think you just put, yeah, it's a bit weird. I'll check that after. Yeah, just distribution by chain and the liquidity. Where does it live on the various dexes? So pretty standard. This one, I guess, could be pretty interesting. So this is one of the base for the exit score along with the redemption module, right? But here it gives you a bit of an idea of some assessment on the pools themselves. Are they balanced? Are they of good quality? The liquidity has been there for a while, things like that. Yeah, and looking also at the venues, because not all venues are equal, right? So something like Bond, the liquidity is on Curve and Uniswap, pretty proven venues. But when you start to get into more exotic stablecoin on more exotic chains, you can have liquidity built on exchanges that have maybe some compromises in terms of permissions and so on. So that would affect the score. It's looking also at the pairing diversity. So do you have various pairs and various pairing assets? And yeah, you can get full breakdown with the distribution per chain, the history of the TVR. It's pretty comprehensive. I've been getting a decent amount of positive feedback on this one. So yeah, I think this one is quite solid. So yeah, this is just the other component of the exit dimension, right? It's not always the case that you have a redemption route, but in the case of Bolt, you have one. You have one that is permissionless, that has pretty much infinite capacity. The whole supply can be redeemed. It would just be a question of fees. And then I guess why it's not scoring 100 is just because you are redeeming to the collateral, right? So to the ETH or the RAV stakes and RSEs, you're not redeeming directly to dollar. So depending of what's happening here, there could be a bit of loss. And the other thing is it has a dynamic fee. So if there is a rush to the redemption, the fee will spike up. So, I mean, it's also a defense mechanism for the stablecoin, makes sense. But again, here we are in purely the stablecoin holder perspective. And so in the perspective of a holder, that means, if suddenly the whole supply was to be redeemed, there might be some limitation on that route. But then, that's why the liquidity and the redemption route are kind of assessed together. And when you have, in the case of Ball, when you have a strong liquidity along with a strong redemption, it kind of adds to the score and turns into a pretty positive exit score. Yeah, you have some stablecoins that are pure redemption, for instance. So those one, the module would be much more demanding on the redemption, simply because it's literally your only way out. So there's a question of redundancy analysis here. Do I have various paths to mobilize my value? Or if I have only one path, then Pharos gets a bit adamant about your path better be very solid. So I'm not trapped into Hotel California, essentially.
Okay, yeah, and then just to quickly go through here you can see like different yield opportunities, and then explore more. There's even quick answers. Okay, now that was a detailed walkthrough of just one stablecoin, but look, as we talked about earlier, you can do that same walkthrough with
if you scroll down, you have
337 coins.
Yeah.
So there's so much detail to go through here. If you're just like, if you're learning about a new stablecoin, you're curious about the risk, or even old stablecoins, and you're worried about kind of how likely it is to depeg, you could get all that information we just walked through for Bold for insert pretty much any stablecoin.
Yeah, maybe something that is pretty cool. I'm also a bit of a non-USD stablecoin maxi, and it will be felt also Pharos. So if you scroll up a little bit, you can filter that page by fiat non-USD, and essentially that would give you all the fiat non-USD stablecoin, right? But because that's a question I get often, it's like, what are the good stablecoin on euro, on Singaporean dollar, on whatsoever, or franc Swiss? So on this page, you can kind of get a good overview of everything that's happening here. Leading to
You could look
pretty
at
interesting.
commodities as well. I just clicked the commodities tab.
Yeah, that's another thing where I do consider those gold or silver to be stable coins. They're just stable coin tracking something different. So they are also included on Pharos, yes.
And then you could also filter by grade. Here you can see here the A stable coins, B, and etc. all the way down.
Yes. And maybe just to wrap up on the safety score, the scoring logic overall. So, we've been through high-grade stablecoins. What we're trying to meme a bit on Twitter with my colleague Ike is that essentially since Pharos exists, not a single stablecoin that was A or B grade exploded or suffered a form of failure. So it's kind of like stick to A and B if you want to play it safe. And of course, this is not investment advice. And there could be, I don't know, USDC, for instance, is A, and there was the SVB weekend. But still, there was no long-term loss of value for holders. But no, if you're in the F territory, we can actually scroll a bit. You'll see you have a lot there. So the thing with F is it's a failing grade. That means Pharos has received to kind of motivate the failure here. It's not just a pure arithmetic thing, right? So I don't know, what do I know well on the screen that you have here? This DUSD Trinity was inappropriately minted 3 times on 2 different chains. If you go a bit below, you have the May stablecoin that we were talking about that suffered from a bridge hack, and that is essentially 20% collateralized even to this day. You have it's a bit of a museum of horror here. You have a lot of different failure mode, but essentially they all have something that capped their score. And another thing, maybe just to wrap up, so you have the full overview on the safety score. The peg is not directly assessed as my 3 dimensions. They don't have peg, but the peg act as a multiplier. So if you go at the very bottom of the list, the bottom of the F, the one that are very close to 0.
Give me one moment. F.
Yeah, so those guys, they all have big peg problem because essentially, again, they might have whatever score to begin with, but then they have such a bad peg that the peg is acting as a multiplier, bringing them to 0. So for instance, PMUSD was also a bit of a breakthrough stablecoin for Pharos because PMUSD was classified as a C- or a D before it even started to depeg. And then Pharos was essentially highlighting all the problems that eventually manifested. This collateral is not very liquid, and it's actually very trusted, and there is no accountability there at all, and very little transparency. And it turned out they started to depeg based on concerns around that, and also very weak, non-existent actually redemption path.
Okay, this was very cool, and we spent a lot of time just looking at this safety scores because they're, in my opinion, the most important part of the dashboard. But that isn't just it. Like here on the markets, you could even look at an overall liquidity. What's going on here? I just did markets and DEX liquidity.
So essentially, it's looking at all the stablecoins that are tracked on Pharos across all the venues and kind of giving you an idea of all the flows of stablecoin across all market-wide. So that's one thing I like to do with Pharos too, is those kind of market-wide feature. So this is really here, you can see a bit like where is the stablecoin volume happening nowadays. And of course, I guess no surprise, Curve, Uniswap, and Radium for Solana. It also gives you an idea of the chains, so the chains that are transiting a stablecoin. So just to be clear with everyone, this is just stablecoin involving volume, right? So if it's a swap between, I don't know, ETH and Bitcoin, Pharos doesn't care. Now, if it's ETH USDC, Pharos starts caring. That's pretty much it. And you have a lot more details on the TVL breakdown and essentially the DEX liquidity score of stablecoin. And this AAUSD is faring very well. It's one of the most liquid stablecoin, along with EuroC, that's also not so well known. But keep in mind that all of this is ponderated to market cap, right? And I think AUSD, you can see it has about 60 million of liquidity in pool, but the market cap is something like 300 million. So it's huge figure for something like AUSD. And another one, I guess, that fits the bill like this, you were just right here, and we can give them a shout out because they're doing good work as well, is FXUSD. You can see it's almost close to the top because same thing here, I think you have 60, 70 million TVL and 20 million in pool, so it's a decent amount that you can exit instantly. And of course, another big hitter in that list is CRV-USD, who is surprised. The Curve stablecoin has very good liquidity on Curve, but yeah, it's still leading to interesting results.
Okay, so now we are somewhat running out of time, and there's still
Oh.
so much more to cover, which is a little disappointing. So what
It's
do you think
okay.
is the most important thing for us to check
The
out?
stability index in overview, I think it's pretty interesting too, in overview. Because this is another market-wide feature. So it's essentially, it's assessing a score, a stability rating of the whole market, right? So these things will move if stablecoins start depegging, and it's weighted by size. So if you scroll a little bit, you have an historical chart, and this is probably my offer, or a bit more. Well, yeah, this one. This is my all-time favorite, everything together feature of Pharos, because literally you can see the whole history of the stablecoin market on that chart, right? So you can see when UST blew up, that's a big spike you have around June 2022. You can see the SVB weekend. Essentially, anytime there was a major stablecoin, major as defined, size of the stablecoin relative to the total stablecoin market cap that moves, you will see a dip in the PSI. So most of the time it's above 90, especially lately, it's been pretty stable. And I guess another thing that I like to see on this chart is it shows you that the market has matured, right? Because you see the number of traumatic events you have in the period from 18 to 23, but then the last traumatic event for the stablecoin market was essentially 3 years ago, a bit more than 3 years ago now. So 3 years without nuclear fallout on the stablecoin market essentially is a pretty good stat.
Very good stat. I just knocked on my desk just to hopefully keep the good run going. And here you could actually get more details about all the notable events. Yeah, this is super cool. Where else should we look?
Maybe you were in the learn section. I guess if people are curious, that could be a cool one. This is overall, Pharos has different kind of more created, narrated information, essentially, So the case studies are pretty interesting. The big events of the stablecoin market, SVB weekend, we have an article on that or whatever. And they use the Pharos data contextualized with some editorial content to kind of tell you what happened on that day. And yes, similar for those mechanisms, so those spec keeping mechanisms we were talking about earlier, they kind of give you an overview of what is this mechanism, how does it work, and things to look for in that mechanism. So anyone looking to beef up on stablecoin understanding, I think this is a really cool one. Another one that is another fav of mine is the cemetery in the risk tab.
The skull emoji made me laugh.
Yes. So this is the name is pretty explicit, right? But you will essentially find a tombstone to all the fallen stablecoin with some epitaph, some information about what they were about. The one that were watched by Pharos at the time of their death, you can even go back to their page that is frozen at the time of death. So you can kind of have a view of the whole events before they died. And you also have market-wide stats at the bottom of the page on like what is the most likely cause of failure for a stablecoin. And you have stats by count, by number of stablecoin, but also stats by TVL at the time of death. So it's pretty interesting, to see, like, for instance, something that is not going to surprise too many people, I guess, but it's still found funny. The regulatory related deaths are very few by count, but they are absolutely massive by size because you have a BUSD in there and a few other big ones that are essentially carrying the whole thing. It's funny stat, but still.
This is a really cool dashboard. Everything has been, but yeah, this specifically, I'm like, oh, this is fascinating. See how they actually died, the ones that did, quote unquote, die.
Yeah, and it's also leading to interesting questions, right? When do you pronounce the death of a stablecoin? It's actually a methodological question that is not easy, because I don't know, something like PMUSD, for instance, has been 50%, 5,000 BPS of peg for like 3 months now. But it's not pronounced dead yet, because the team is still saying that redemption will be coming. So it's hard to know, and I'm trying to establish a framework here. I'm becoming a bit of a stablecoin undertaker is the word in English. But yeah, it's a tough one. Maybe if we have time for one more in the risk tab still. The freeze watch, because this one, since we talk about censorship risk and so on, so this is another you can scroll. We have a bit of warning. It's a little issue that I push, but it's not affecting freeze watch. So yeah, I guess that's the thing of
wow,
that's a sad stat, right?
That is sad.
Sad as hell. Yes. Yeah, it is what it is. What can I say? But I picture that maybe putting the number would make people react one way or another. You have it expressed another way, where 0.05% of the stablecoin mass can resist censorship. You can click all of that, the no, yes, and so on. Yeah, you just did perfect.
Yeah.
So you kind of get
no, and it brought me down to here.
Yeah, it brings you to a filtered view of. Oh, I need to check this list. I think it brings you to a filtered view of what's happening there, and you can see that there are very few and very few that are actually like resilient. You have different categorization, right? So you have the explicit yes, like a USDC or USDT can freeze you, of course. Then you have the possible when there are options for it, and the upstream one where maybe the stablecoin doesn't have directly explicit freeze function, but it is made mostly of USDC, for instance, and so can be frozen this way. And funny trivia, just so I can put the flex, Frax, the stablecoin, introduced a freeze feature quite recently as part of the new push, towards getting Genius compliant and so on, blah, blah, blah. And Pharos picked it up before Frax even communicated on it. So it was pretty fun. That led to an interesting conversation. We didn't want to, throw shade on them, but we also wanted to do our job. So anyway, long way to tell you that Pharos is tracking that. Maybe if you go back just on the
you hear that, if you want information before teams even announce it, Pharos will keep you updated there.
It's not the first time. If you go back there just to the base page without the filter on, scroll down a bit and you have no, sorry, the freeze watch. Yeah, this one. Yeah, and yeah, you have. Oh, why don't you have the chart? You should have the chart. Maybe because you're zoomed in a bit. Oh no, here. Yeah. So this is aggregated view of the freeze, destroy, blacklist event across about 40 stablecoin that Pharos is tracking directly in that regard. So that's also pretty interesting chart, and you can see that the volume is not far from about 1 billion per quarter being frozen lately. And you can see that this quarter that we are not so much into the quarter, I guess, still a month, is shaping up to be another strong one. So again, you have the freeze log below all the events that Pharos is tracking. You have stablecoin address by address. So yeah, same thing. I can't do much here, but provide the data, and for people hopefully to see the size of the problem. Use stablecoin that cannot be frozen if you don't want to be subject to this kind of risk.
And here you can even see more specific every single freeze event. Yeah. That's super cool. Updated as of yesterday.
Yep. Chain by chain, event by event, and the various chain where it can happen. It's also, you have some stuff like I'm monitoring in real time. USDS has a freeze feature that is not activated yet. But essentially, if it is activated, you have here. It will be Pharos is checking kind of daily at their contract level what's the feature triggered into action. And so the day it is activated, you will be the first to know right after the guys on the maker governance, I guess, because they have to vote on it to activate.
Okay, we are getting low on time, but let's do a speed round because I feel wrong ending this before covering all the amazing kind of features.
Oh yeah, I mean, we have a lot. We can go for another hour if you want. Maybe another interesting one would be the compare in the analyze tab. Because I find that people, when they think about stablecoin, they might know one stablecoin and then they discover this new stablecoin, and it's easier for them to reason about kind of comparing to what they know. So you have a bit of some default that are proposed to you. So this is like the big four, for instance, but you can also customize and pick the stablecoin you want. So, if you're familiar with USDT model, for instance, you can just put USDT as a base and put this new stablecoin that you just heard about, but you're not so familiar with, I don't know, USDG or whatever. You have so many. And then you can see the comparison contrast between the two, dimension by dimension. So like USDE, even if you want.
So here you can see the comparison.
Yeah, you get side-by-side table across all the dimensions that Pharos tracks, and even like the overlay of the safety score chart that we were watching before. It's a bit below. But yeah, it kind of gives you an idea immediately of what to watch for. It's pretty dense, but I find it quite informative.
Where to next?
So we did the maybe the dependency map. That's another highlight. So it's in the analyze section. Yeah, you had it. So if you scroll a bit, you get the full map.
Oh, whoa.
Yes, because this one has the impact of kind of showing you visually that, it's essentially a wrapping game, the stablecoin market right now, right? So you have a lot of stablecoins that are collateralized. You putting another stablecoin as collateral or using them in the peg stability module like USDS is doing with USDC and other stablecoin. But then those stablecoins are themselves wrapped into staked earning variants, that's the SUSDS. And then this SUSDS is used by 16 other stablecoins as collateral or the PSM assets. So you get this kind of chain of dependencies that, when you look at the whole map like this, it's just like a net, like a net of a spider. It's really hard to see. But if you scroll a bit below, you will get like the top. You get a count and details about the big hubs, as they are called. So essentially looking at the numbers of dependents, but also their weight. And so that's pretty interesting to see that, DeFi is so dependent on USDC because at the end of the day, USDT is at least twice, but even maybe about 3 times the size of USDC. No, maybe not 3 times, but twice for sure. So, it's not necessarily the most logical choice if you were just thinking in terms of pure size, essentially. But this is what happened. USDC is much more integrated into DeFi, and USDT is more, used on big exchanges, off-ramping services, and so on. And yeah, maybe another interesting thing here is I was mentioning it, but the Sky saving USDS, right? Because of its very stable earning rate, has been used quite a lot across various DeFi protocol. So that's something that the chart makes visible. And yeah, if you scroll while you're on it, go back on the Sky USDS where you were. Yeah, if you scroll, you will get the dependency map again, but this time contextualized just to USDS. So it's kind of a better way to zoom in on the chart and see the actual dependency network of a stablecoin with all the various dependent that there is, and again, what is upstream. So here, you have USDS upstream because SUSDS is a wrap version on it, and then all those dependent on the SUSDS. I like this one. I think it's a pretty visual, cool one to show out what's happening.
Yeah, the visuals are really kind of clean to be able to follow what's happening, and then it's just so jarring to see the entire dependency map.
Yeah. Well.
And there you can see like USDS within the entire dependency and all that. Okay, let's pick one last one to quickly go through. What are you thinking?
Okay, market alt peg. This one I have to, because this one I wanted to really highlight the diversity of peg that you have. So the map is not contractual, right? Gold is not in the sky. It's just a liberty, artist liberty taken. But roughly the stablecoin are placed where the currency is used. As you can see, Europe is a bit crowded in terms of count, so you end up with, for visibility, stablecoin spread a bit across the whole Europe. The stablecoin are sized to the market cap a bit loosely, but kind of shows you, some interesting things. For instance, this A7, A5 in Russia. Very few people know about that, but you have a $500 million market cap stablecoin in Russia on the Rubble, and it's pretty much the only thing you have on Rubble. Interesting story. You can look at the page. Custodians is under sanction by various Western entities and so on. But yeah, you can see a bit, how the map is starting to color up, right? With some in Africa, a bit more in Latin America. Canadian dollar is also not so well served yet, but has a few options, right? Sadly, they are pretty much very poor, poor Canadians. You can see also the yen picking up, right? You have a bit of a yen hub on Japan. They have a few that are starting to get traction there. And the gold galaxy on the top left. I don't know. I find this map pretty cool to kind of get a sense of all the diversity of pegs that you have. And
yeah, just as a reminder, this is in markets, alt pegs. This is a really cool dashboard. I didn't even know about some of these countries having stablecoins.
Yeah, there's a lot of unknown stablecoins. So yeah, you can browse.
Filter.
Exactly, yes. You have about 30 different pegs that are tracked on Pharos. So it gives you an idea. But as you can see, you have a decent amount that are essentially one-hit wonder, right? So there's just one stablecoin under that peg that is tracked. But it is an arc, I think, for the next months, years, So people are very focused on the Clarity bill and all of that in the US. But essentially, there are a lot of countries that are working on similar framework, and a lot of countries where centralized stablecoin were very hard to emit / impossible for legal reasons, or very, you had to do it through roundabout ways, where now it's unlocking essentially. And especially in Asia, you have a law on the way in Japan, in Korea. So you might see a bit of a boom of the centralized stablecoin there. It creates interesting situations as well, right? So another interesting one in Europe would be if you check the Swiss franc. So we talked a bit about the ZCHF, right? That's one of the biggest for franc Suisse, because essentially it's very hard legally to operate a centralized stablecoin on the Swiss franc. If you check the CHFO, the first one, I think the description is pretty funny. Yeah, the Frankfurt-Zurich pipeline kind of tells you everything, because it's a Swiss franc stablecoin, but it is essentially operating out of Zurich, Germany, right? So the Frankfurt, Germany, sorry. Yeah, you have these interesting situations that are stemming out. But yeah, I do think the alt-peg market, as we call it on Pharos, is going to pick up some traction, right? Because stablecoins have such a huge potential for international remittance, and like dollar is cool, and yes, maybe some people are happy to save in dollar, but at the end of the day, they are saving to expense to cover their living costs, to buy their coffee with their crypto card or whatever that is, and that is best served by a local currency. So it's really important that we cover that as well.
Okay, this was amazing. I think we clearly need to do this again because we didn't even cover everything. But just to close this out, what are you building next for Pharos? And also, where can people like follow you and give like a little shout out to Polaris too?
Yeah, sure. So Pharos.watch, Pharos Watch on Twitter. I guess that's the main place to follow. We also have Telegram groups you will find on the website. For what we're building next, so we keep refining the framework and hardening the infrastructure. That's the main thing, and focus until the end of the year. Yeah, we haven't talked so much about that, but we want to make Pharos sustainable economically, right? So right now, Pharos is operating at a slight deficit that I am essentially covering. I don't have problem with that, but it's important for the future of the project to be able to self-sustain. So we're looking into various ways to find funding. Pharos is open to donation, and that's one of the main ways we've been funded so far. But we're also looking at, for instance, we have an API currently in free access But honestly, the people are hitting my poor API very hard, and I'm considering essentially switching the access to be a bit more limited on the free side and offer paid API keys. Essentially, we are exploring various options there, but the core idea is that we want the Pharos website to remain entirely free forever, and I will literally like shut down the project rather than force people to pay for it. And I don't think people realize what it means, so I won't give name, but let's say similar project to list a stablecoin, they will charge the project between $2,000 to $10,000, right? So Pharos lists everything that we can find, and we never ask anything out of the project. So yeah, I think this is an important dimension. So that's for the funding, I guess. And then quick shout out to Polaris without being too long. So as you can see, I have a lot of opinions about how stablecoin should be built and what is needed for the DeFi to actually make an impact over the long term, right? And I think, as we've seen on the Freeze Watch page, this figure of 0.05% is probably one of the most depressing of our whole space. I would love this figure to get to 5, 10, or 20% one day. And this is essentially what we are doing with Polaris. We're building a stablecoin that has essentially properties in terms of resilience similar to a ball that we just looked at, but engineered to be able to reach a massive scale. And it's actually a bigger project than just a stablecoin, because we are literally tackling two biggest problems of Ethereum, in my perspective, at once. It kind of happened accidentally as we were building it, but essentially the other problem you have with Ethereum, as we've seen recently, is the staking question. You have question on the issuance and so on, centralization across staking providers. And essentially, we need to have economic utility for Ethereum as an asset that is not just entirely dependent on the staking. And so that's also what Polaris is achieving with its PEs. That is also used as collateral for then the PUSD and all the stablecoins. So yeah, Pharos is a really cool project, kind of connecting everything we discussed tonight, right? Trustlessness and censorship resistance, but also the infrastructure is essentially debt asset agnostic. So we're going to be launching with PUSD, USDP, sorry, and Gold P. But pretty much anything can be game on that system. So in a mature Polaris on its life, we picture there will be maybe dozens of different debt assets across various local currencies, and pretty much anything that has an oracle and can be issued as debt on Polaris. So yeah, Polaris.finance for anyone interested in Polaris. That's your starting point. And yeah, maybe just as we're on it, we just launched a testnet, a new version of our public testnet, a couple of days ago. So you can actually get your hands on Polaris and try it out, because it has a lot of new mechanism, the bonding curve for the Ps, and a lot of other things that goes with. So it's a good time to better your understanding of the protocol ahead of the launch that we anticipate for early next year.
All right, get excited for Polaris coming soon. Check out the testnet. I'm sure we'll do a live stream about Polaris at some point. Token Breeze, thank you so much for coming on. This was amazing. I wish we would have had more time to cover everything, but there's only so much time, and I still learned so much, and I'm sure the audience did too. So thank you for building Pharos, and thank you for everything that you do for the DeFi community.
Thanks for having me, Jason. It was tons of fun.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good one.